Hello, everyone. I'm Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot. I'm sending a special message during the U.S. Mayoral Roundtable and reiterating how important it is for us to work together to tackle our country's biggest issues. This moment calls upon us to think bigger and more boldly. We must be inspired to reimagine our present and our future through innovation as we look to rebuild our cities to ensure that they work for all of our residents. In order to transform our cities, a new path needs to be acknowledged. And we need to unlock new opportunities, identify methods for growth, and present a new and better way for all of us to live. Specifically, we need to come together to support common sense gun legislation and to do what is necessary to keep our communities safe block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood. And while we focus on reimagining our cities, let us also keep our families and our residents top of mind. In closing, let me say a hearty thank you and appreciation to my brother, Mayor Michael B. Hancock, and George Borsiaga, and the entire U.S. Mayoral Roundtable team for inspiring collaboration across the country. Thank you all very much, and God bless.
Good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you are around the country today. If you're on the West Coast or in Denver, Colorado, we say good morning to you. And we welcome you to this month's Mayoral Roundtable. I'm so excited to have you join us today. We have a phenomenal and very timely discussion today. But I want to start off by really giving thanks to George Berciaga and his team there at Ignite Cities for their government technology work that they do and their partnership with projects all over the country. We want to thank you for doing this roundtable every month. We also want to give a big shout out to our friend, our partner, our colleague, the Honorable Mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, for the intro video and for her incredible support and leadership as mayor of one of the bigger cities in America, but around the nation, as she talks about this important issue that I'm going to introduce in just a moment, and so many other issues. Mayor Lori Lightfoot has been a partner with me on voter rights and so many other things that we are doing around the country, and we want to thank her. We also want to thank our dear friend, Phyllis Dickerson, the incomparable Phyllis Dickerson, who is CEO of the African American Mayors Association, for her continued support and partnership in this one, this issue of Mayor's Roundtable. Today's U.S. Mayoral Roundtable is focused on reinventing our cities, and our topic today is gun prevention and citizen engagement. And I got to tell you, we've got two of the best mayors to talk about this. But before we do, I introduce these two wonderful guys who are with me. Let me do some housekeeping, and we're going to ask George to say a few words. We have over 150 registered city leaders, city ladies who are registered for this discussion from around the country. We want to thank you for joining us. I think it's going to be a great discussion. During today's event, please send any questions via Zoom chat feature, and the team will alert me that we have questions, or at least let me know what the question is, and we'll get it out to the panelists. Finally, before we begin, we want to introduce George Berciaga. George just informed me that he has COVID, and so he looks good. He looks COVID good, and we're glad he's doing well. But Brother George, you bring us together every month through Ignite Cities and this great platform. Why don't you say a few words to welcome our guests?
I will. First of all, the first thank you I have to say is to you. Every month when we come together, you inspire the conversation and lead us to actually create the change that's necessary, but also for our friendship. We appreciate your leadership and friendship. Also, Mayor Frank Scott Jr., thank you for always being there. Every call, every text, you're always there. The response is quick. And Mayor Brown, thank you for everything you're doing for your city during this critical time. We send all of our strength to you, and we appreciate you spending your time with us today. There's a few other partners, cities today. We'd like to say thank you. Phyllis, thank you for your leadership. Clarence at NLC, USCM, Mayor Suarez, I just jumped off the phone with. He wanted me to send a hello to all three of you, and thank you for your leadership. Yeah, I tell him as long as he doesn't mess up the hair, you know, but he just wanted to say thank you for participating and really extending your thought and your leaderships on this critical conversation as well. I've talked to probably 20 different mayors over the last 5 days about this conversation as we prepared for it. I want to say thank you to all of them: Cantrell, Adler, and so many others. Thank you for your leadership as well. Mayor Hancock, I'm going to pass it back to you so we can get started.
Thank you. You mentioned so many of our friends from around the country, and I'm proud to bring up two of my friends as well from around the country, two men who are leading great cities in America and doing a phenomenal job. First, let's welcome the mayor of the great city of Buffalo, Byron Brown, the Honorable Byron Brown. He is also the treasurer of the African American Mayors Association. Mayor Brown, why don't you give us all a brief introduction of yourself?
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Hancock. I've been mayor of the city of Buffalo since 2006. It's a great honor to lead this great American city of over 278,000 people. Prior to the pandemic, Buffalo was going through a real economic renaissance. We've resumed that economic renaissance now. Last 10 years, over $8 billion of economic development, investment and spending in the city of Buffalo, and certainly very proud of what's happening in this city. An honor to be able to talk to you, Mayor Hancock, and to you, Mayor Scott, and George Burciaga for this very important conversation.
Thank you for being here. For everyone listening, I was teasing Mayor Brown before we came on live and said, man, you got a Martin Luther King voice thing happening there. I mean, I think we're going to be blessed with some revisionist history just listening to your voice talk today. Thank you for joining us, Mayor Brown, all the way from Buffalo, New York. I'm also proud to welcome another dear friend from Little Rock, Arkansas, the great mayor, the Honorable Frank Scott Jr. He's also president of the African American Mayors Association. Mayor Scott, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Mayor Hancock, it's always a pleasure to be with you as well as with George and Mayor Brown. My name is Frank Scott Jr. I'm the proud mayor of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, state capital city. I've been mayor since 2019, and over the course of this period of time, we've seen historic jobs growth of close to 8,000 new jobs since we've taken office, despite of a pandemic, despite of a summer of George Floyd, a historic snowstorm and historic flood. We've continued to grow forward here in our city. We've also increased our population to close to 203,000 people, which makes us one of two mid-sized cities in the South that actually grew. And so we continue to push forward as it relates to job growth, population growth, but understanding that we also have to focus on affordable housing because we do not want to price our residents out. And so as we have this grow forward mentality, it's a true honor to lead Arkansas State Capital City. It's also a double honor to help lead my colleagues across the nation as the president of the African American Mayors Association, which accounts for close to 500 mayors across the nation, representing 1/3 of our nation's GDP. And so we're ready to work. We continue to do the work of our people as we continue to move forward together for all of our respective citizens.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Mayor Scott. Listen, we do a 30-second icebreaker here just to get into this because we try to have a good conversation. We're going to talk about a very serious topic today, but before we do, the changing seasons represent new opportunities for our citizens, our constituents, as well as for us as mayors. So I'm going to ask you both just to tell me the one thing you're looking forward to, or you look forward to during the fall season in your city.
Wow. I'll start off. One of the things that I look forward to in the fall season in the city of Little Rock is the opportunity to go on some brisk walks and runs on our Big Dam Bridge. You see every sector of the city, you see all races and genders. It truly shows what Little Rock is, and it's a beautiful time to see it.
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Mayor Brown?
In Buffalo, one of the things that we look forward to during the fall season is the start of the NFL football season. Our Buffalo Bills are looking very good. They're projected to be in the Super Bowl this year. We hope that's an accurate prediction. So we are looking forward to a great football season for our Buffalo Bills.
From your mouth to God's ear, Mayor Brown. I that's my answer as well. I'm so excited about the kickoff of the NFL season, getting ready to see our beloved Broncos hit the field. And I want to tell you something, Mayor Brown. I went to the Bronco camp recently. We introduced some new owners.
You just got him started, Mayor Brown. You just got him
Yeah, it's
started.
on,
That's all you
man.
have to say is
But
NFL. You just got to say
but
NFL.
I want you to know. So everybody who's listening in, the Buffalo Bills are the preseason favorite to represent the AFC conference in the Super Bowl. But a neutral fan, a member of the national media said to me, he says, I really see Buffalo and Denver playing in the AFC Championship. And so, hey, I have no problem with that. I'd love to see you come to Denver for the AFC Championship. And we battle it out. So good luck to the Buffalo Bills. I expect to see them in the end as well. I think you have a heck of a team out there. It should be a good one. Let's transition to the topic that I know people are tuning in for us to talk about. I want to start with you, Mayor Brown, because I want to address the big elephant in the room. Obviously, the rest of the nation grieved with all the people of Buffalo, New York, back in May, when a white supremacist walked into a grocery store, and because of his beliefs, his attitudes toward people of color, particularly Black people, he shot and I believe injured. He killed 10 and injured 2 in that shooting. Since the start of this year, the United States has seen 400 mass shootings in this nation. Gun violence, we're all seeing a rise in violent crime perpetrated by gun violence all over this nation today. But let's check in with you and see how the people of Buffalo are doing, how you're healing, and hopefully our prayers and thoughts fail. I mean, you hear from all of us. I know hopefully you heard from me when I sent my text saying, Mayor, we're praying for you in your city right now. But why don't you tell us all how things are going in Buffalo and how you all are healing?
Thank you, Mayor Hancock. And I want to thank my fellow mayors from all across the country that reached out, that sent thoughts and prayers. Some say that thoughts and prayers are not enough. They are not enough, but they do help. Yeah. They make a big difference to know that others care. And I want to just say a special thank you to all my colleagues that reached out in such a special way at such a difficult time for our community. Yes, Mayor Hancock, 10 beautiful lives taken on May 14th by a white supremacist whose intent was to kill as many Black people as possible. 3 others injured by this racially motivated shooter. President Biden, Vice President Harris came to Buffalo, described the mass shooting as an act of domestic terrorism. And the Buffalo community came together in tremendous fashion. Obviously, we're still healing. People are in different stages of healing, but the community came together in an exemplary way, wrapping arms around survivors, families of victims, holding each other up, providing food in that community because the supermarket had to close in the aftermath of that shooting, making sure that people were able to get fresh food, that they were able to get their prescriptions filled, that they were able to have their needs provided for. The supermarket reopened. It has added more offerings than ever before. It has added products of Black businesses sourced from the Buffalo community. And in spite of our pain, we are moving forward as a community. Our goal is to never forget the victims of this racially motivated shooting, the survivors, and to build that part of the city and our entire city back better and stronger than ever. And our governor, Kathy Hochul, made a major commitment to East Buffalo, where the shooting occurred, of an additional $50 million to support the needs of that section of our city. And I have asked the federal government to make a substantial financial commitment to the Buffalo community as we heal and as we rebuild.
Mayor Brown, you mentioned prior to going live a concept that I thought was very informative and quite frankly, innovative. around how the federal government ought to respond to these type of incidents that occur in our cities. Because one of the first questions I was going to ask is what's missing in the toolbox to help cities, that would aid cities in being responsive after the fact, but also during the fact. But let's talk about after the fact first.
So after the fact, the impact of a mass shooting has tremendous financial consequences on survivors, on the families of victims, on depressing the home values in that area, on impacting the economy of the businesses that operate in that area. They lose profitability, they lose some customer base. We've fought hard, worked hard for that not to happen in Buffalo. But because of the massive financial consequences, I think mass shootings should be treated by the federal government in much the same way that natural disasters are treated, where FEMA will come in and provide financial resources for the community to heal and rebuild. In the aftermath of a mass shooting, there is a tremendous financial need for the community to heal and rebuild. And I have talked to President Biden about this concept. I've spoken to Vice President Harris about this concept. The White House, I can say, is listening. We have heard from many different departments in the federal government, and we are thankful for them listening to this suggestion about how to help cities heal in the aftermath of a mass shooting.
That is a powerful, powerful and innovative thought. And I appreciate that, and one in which I'm going to try to put a pin in and come back to it. Even as part of the larger discussion and leadership group, we'll all be down in Miami shortly to have that conversation. I'd love to make sure that that's part of the agenda, at least comes up during the agenda. So if you have any written information on, or your, the vision laid out on that, I'd love to get it from you and be happy to carry that forward. And that's just a very, very profound idea. Mayor Scott, let's get you in this conversation and just really pick your brain. I mean, you are leading one of America's, most profound and historic cities. And can you talk about what you're seeing today with regards to gun violence in Little Rock, Arkansas, and what do we need to do proactively? Mayor Brown talks about after the fact, particularly a mass shooting, but we're seeing, the isolated incidents here and there that are rising in our cities. Any thoughts?
Yes, I tell you, one of the things that in Little Rock that we've paid great attention to and focus on how we're being proactive is to take a holistic approach to gun violence, where we're focusing on prevention, intervention, and treatment programs, particularly for our youth and our young adults. We're seeing an alarming numbers where majority of our homicides are between the ages of 15 and 25. And so when you know that, you see a lack of hope. And so we've created a HOPE initiative, which stands for Holistic Outreach Prevention in each and every neighborhood. And what that means is we've been able to leverage American Rescue Plan Act dollars to divert towards community reduction in violence, community programs with prevention, intervention, treatment, where we've been able now to fund mental health and social workers within our Little Rock Police Department. We've been able to now focus on our residents that are experiencing homelessness and soon create a homelessness village. But also, not only are we focusing on these dollars for prevention, intervention, treatment, but also summer youth employment, really ensuring that our youth have something to do, that they're being proactive and productive with their time, not only throughout the summer, but throughout the school year. And so as we continue to focus on this, we see one of the things as a reaction to COVID-19 is that many of our youth, they lost a couple years of in-person learning, which created and amassed a lot of trauma within themselves. And so we're working through that. And we think the best long-term strategy is to focus on this holistic approach. Of course, the three of us are mayors. We understand the short term is proactive policing and targeting patrols. But much of that's after the fact. How do we prevent a youth or a young adult from picking up a gun? Because in the times where the three of us have grown up, when we've had an issue when we were youth or young adult, we'll use our hands. And now our youth, they're picking up guns and they have access to illegal guns. And so not only are we focused on this holistic approach, it's also to understand, very similar to what Mayor Brown just shared, from a federal approach, we have to treat gun violence as a public health epidemic. And so that's what we've done. That's what we issued a public health emergency in February of this year, at the height of our violent crime, where we were able to take a lot of the red tape that we generally deal with bureaucracy to ensure that we got these dollars to the right programs to see solutions. And so I'm happy to report that while our homicide rate is still high, our overall violent crime is now down -6%. And a lot of that is attributed to our dual approach of proactive policing, but the long-term approach of holistic approaches with prevention, intervention, treatment.
Mayor Scott, I'm on the same page with you in regards to the public health side of this, the holistic approach. As I tell people, what we're seeing today in our communities didn't happen overnight, but you can see kind of the genealogy of a system that is rendering these challenges. Let me ask you to give the acronym of your program, HOPE, again. And then what I want to do is go back to Mayor Brown. And Mayor Brown, you can answer this question on the heels of Mayor Scott's response. Tell us a little bit about the shooter, and I don't want his name, but the description of the supremacist, his attitudes, and what led to it. Because I'm wondering how we connected to in terms of the holistic approach and really preventing the type of things that you saw in Buffalo.
Sure. So HOPE stands for Holistic Outreach Prevention in Every Neighborhood. Mayor Brown?
So the shooter in Buffalo on May 14th was an 18-year-old individual. The individual described themselves as a white supremacist. They were someone that law enforcement believes was radicalized through social media. The individual harbored all forms of hate, hated Black people, people of color, hated immigrants and refugees, hated Jewish people. And in this particular case, this individual traveled over 3 hours from where they lived to come to a zip code that had a high concentration of Black people. And the individual's plan was to shoot as many people in the store as possible and then go up and down Jefferson Avenue, the street that the store was located on, and shoot as many people as he possibly could on the street. Fortunately, there was a security guard in the store that was a retired member of the Buffalo Police Department that engaged the shooter, that returned fire. The shooter was heavily armored, wearing military grade body armor. So even though it is believed that the security guard struck the shooter with fire, the normal bullets did not have an effect of stopping him. And that retired veteran, 30-year veteran of the Buffalo Police Department was killed. But by engaging the shooter, he slowed him down and saved lives. There were people in the store that got people out of the store, got them into a storage area, and saved lives. The Buffalo police responded within 1 minute of the 911 call going out and were able to engage the shooter outside of the store and get him to surrender himself to law enforcement. That was so critically important in that if the shooter had gone back in the store, there is no question that individual would have been able to kill more people in the store. So the police response was swift. It was effective in disarming this individual and bringing them into custody. But again, it raises the concern about social media and the proliferation of hate speech and people being indoctrinated in the ways of hate on social media.
Mayor Brown, thank you so very much for that. Let's take a look at the United States for just a moment. As I mentioned at the top of this effort, this conversation, we've already seen 400 mass shootings in the United States. We're seeing 13, on average, 13 mass shootings in the US per day. But we, as mayors, experience and are responding to, and have, our resources, our police officers are responding to daily violence that are not necessarily mass shootings, but as Mayor Scott pointed out, young men shooting young men in our domestic violence situations. In recent years, we've seen a 30% increase in gun violence. We have seen a 30% increase in gun violence in Denver alone just this past year. An estimated of 21.8 million guns were sold by licensed dealers in 2020 during COVID. We all remember the reports of a number of guns that were being sold. That's a 64% increase over 2019. America continues to lead the world in gun ownership. At the end of June, of course, Congress and President Biden were able to sign into law the first major gun legislation in years. According to data published by Everytown, by the end of 2020, an estimated nearly 600,000 background checks took longer than 3 business days. Because of a loophole in many of those laws, like in Charleston, all sales delayed past that time frame. It took longer than 3 days. You had to go ahead and proceed with offering or issuing the license. That loophole resulted in over 5,800 illegal purchasers acquiring guns. Mayor Scott, I think, very beautifully articulated the need to bring systemic approaches to gun violence. In Denver, we have confiscated 2,100 guns in 2021 off the streets. We've already confiscated 1,200 in 2022. I'm interested in what's happening in your cities in terms of gun violence, beyond the mass shootings that have occurred, unfortunately, in Buffalo and other cities around the country. But it's the everyday things that are taxing the American public as well, and giving people a sense of insecurity in their own communities. What is it? Let's talk more about the systems, because to you, Mayor Scott, I convene multiple agencies as well, and so this is, everybody's got to play a role here, all hands on deck, whether you're in housing, human services, social services, everybody has to be a part of this effort. What is the message? Let's get more crystal clear in the message to cities who are trying to face this issue and how we bring a systemic approach to this. You want to start us off, Mayor Scott?
Yes, I think one of the things is it has to be an all hands on deck approach, very similar to what you just shared. What we're seeing in Little Rock, not only are we doing the dual approach of proactive policing, the holistic approaches I've just previously shared, but also understanding that, let's take care of blight, and understand that many of our high crime areas have blight. Many of our high crime areas may have a larger tab of code enforcement issues, much of which sometimes you have issues with the owners of the properties or air properties or air property rights and things of that particular nature, but really utilizing the bully pulpit of our offices to jumpstart owners that may not even live in our respective cities, but not taking good care of their property. And so that's the reason why we have to get our housing and neighborhood programs departments together, our code enforcement, planning and zoning, understanding that certain businesses have to be, just as we deal with residents and issues, we have to do the same thing with our businesses and how they keep up their businesses and whether or not they're inviting criminal activity from that standpoint. So it's understanding that every city department has a role to play in public safety, because that creates quality of life and place within our city. So I'm happy that we've created community violence response teams within our city, very similar to what you've shared, Mayor Hancock, where we really look at repeat offenders, whether it be residential or commercial, as it relates to high crime areas. Secondly, we work very diligently with our utility provider, particularly with the energy, whereas that there may be some areas of our city that are high crime areas where lights aren't well lit. And we know that that is a crime deterrent. And so we've done a great job in working with our utility provider to ensure that particularly in the high crime areas, that we're doing a better job of notifying when we see unlit uh, light posts, but also to ensure that the ones that are lit, that they're very bright, to ensure that it lights, it lights and shines a light on any activity that's going on. And then finally, we have to get smarter on crime. And so we're working right now to announce here in the next month or so is a real-time crime center. We're seeing cities that are really focused on that to have additional eyes on the street to ensure that we are doing what we can to not only be reactive to crime, but be proactive by preventing it with these measures.
Mayor Brown, any thoughts? Can you talk about what's happening in Buffalo? I know you and the team in the city are responding to and recovering and healing from the mass shooting that occurred in May, but you have management of everyday environment as well in Buffalo.
Mayor Hancock, like you and Mayor Scott, we believe that it has to be an all hands on deck approach. It has to be a holistic approach. We have a program that fights blight in our community. We call it the Clean Sweep, where we go into challenged, blighted areas of our city, starting in May, going through, and this is impressive in Buffalo, going right through the end of October. Starting to get a little cold in October in Buffalo, but that's how dedicated people are. And we go into about 30 different neighborhoods with city departments, with the county, with the state, sometimes with federal agencies. And in a one-day period of time, we try to address blight and improve quality of life in that particular neighborhood. That has been a very effective and successful strategy for us in addressing blight in Buffalo. We also have focused on summer employment of our youth. This year in Buffalo, we're spending the most money in the history of our city on putting our young people to work. That has been very helpful. One component of our employment initiative is something that we call Earn to Learn, where we actually provide pay for young people that have to go to summer school to get them caught up to grade level, and some that might not have graduated on time to assist them with graduating on time and providing the paycheck for going to summer school as an incentive to doing that. So engaging the youth and making sure that the youth are meaningfully occupied is critical to this. And then finally, I'll mention a micro hotspot violent crime prevention plan that we have in the city of Buffalo that's been very successful this year. Community engagement is a big part of it, engaging with the community. We do park and walks where officers in targeted hotspots park their vehicles, walk, engage with the community, talk to the community, build that relationship. And we have actually seen, using this approach, shootings in the city of Buffalo go down by 36% this year as compared to the last 2 years. And in the month of July that just passed, our shooting incidents were down 55%, our shooting victims down 65% compared to July of 2020 and 2021. So we are having some success in Buffalo with the approaches that we have been taking.
Again, mayor's responding to critical issues with a very pragmatic, systemic approach. I want to give you both an example that I think will illuminate and illustrate exactly what you both are talking about. In Denver, we had a community that was riddled with crime, had some public housing in the area. We also had a police substation there, and a new commander comes on, and she's watching the crime, she's watching the gang violence, and she decided she would take a holistic approach, and she made a clarion call to all the city agencies, including zoning and public works. And she talked about the violence, and immediately those department leaders were like, what are we doing in this room? We have nothing to do with crime. She says, oh, absolutely you do. She asked the question of public works, those dumpsters that are in the alley that are covered with graffiti and quite frankly look like they're rotting underneath. When's the last time you changed those dumpsters? When was the last time you looked at that leaning light post that should have been replaced years ago in the neighborhood? And then the design people or the zoning folks were like, so why are we here? And say, your environmental design has as much to do with the public safety as I do as a police officer. Why aren't these streets open up so kids can ride their bikes instead of being closed up in these areas where we got barricades and they can't go further? When was the last time we decided we would rezone that land so it can be developed in the residential as opposed to sitting there like a field of weeds, So in other words, we got to improve the environment. And by the way, my officers are getting out of the car. They're going to start walking, playing catch with these kids, playing basketball, pickup, getting to know the neighbors and building relationship. We saw, once the implementation of all this went in, tremendous drop in crime. The dumpsters were replaced. The light posts were restabilized and stood tall. And officers got out of the cars and started getting to know the people instead of rolling through the street and only stopping when they were there to discipline someone or arrest somebody. So what you both are talking about makes an awful lot of sense. Now, both of you were recently in New York where Mayor Adams convened mayors to discuss the issue, around gun violence prevention and gun industry accountability. Can both of you talk about what came out of that conversation that maybe some of us can look to enact or carry forward in our own cities? Mayor Brown, would you like to start?
I will let my president of the African American Mayors Association, Mayor Scott, start.
Well, thank you so much, Treasurer Brown. Definitely appreciate you. Well, here's the deal. The African American Mayors Association, in partnership with the Mayors Against Illegal Guns, several of us, maybe 12 to 15, traveled to Gracie Mansion in New York City with Mayor Adams to have some strategic discussions on how do we address the gun industry. We all figured out that close to 70% of all the illegal gun activity are being produced by 5 of the major gun manufacturers. And oh, by the way, many of those gun manufacturers are organizations that we do business with. And so as we understand that this gun violence is an epidemic, it's a public health emergency, we have to understand too, it's more than just our holistic approaches, it's more than just our proactive policing, but we have to address the purse. And those are people who are not only manufacturing these guns, but allowing these guns to be distributed in an illegal fashion. And so we talk through strategies on ways to address that, much of which we cannot share today because it would be giving the strategy to the public from this particular standpoint. But I can assure you, when 12 to 15 mayors get together for half of a day to have a summit, as we stepped away from our cities, it had to be very important. And so we're proud of the partnership of the African American Mayors Association and Mayors Against Illegal Gun Activity, and to address this vital issue, this gun epidemic, this public health emergency. Mayor Brown?
So out of that, one of the things that I don't think this is giving away a strategy that will be implemented, that we'll be reaching out to mayors across the country to be a part of, is holding gun manufacturers accountable for guns that might have at one point been sold illegally that then become crime guns in our cities and wreak havoc on communities all across our country. And as Mayor Scott said, it is a small percentage of gun manufacturers whose guns end up being used this way in our communities. And there are steps that we can take and we will take to hold gun manufacturers accountable.
And I think one last thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Coming out of it is more information sharing between cities and the ATF. The African American Mayors Association stepped up and really supported the recently confirmed ATF Commissioner, Mr. Dattleback. And so we're working, as we talked earlier about the real-time crime center, by having additional eyes on the street. We got to have additional eyes on these guns and where they're being located and how they're being transmitted, to track down and not only solve cases, but prevent cases from even happening.
You know, I got to thank both of you for what I think has been a very informative and, an enlightening conversation around an issue that every city in America is dealing with. We could have talked a lot more about how issues around opiates and meth and fentanyl are also impacting our violent crime in America, and gun violence as well as the people experiencing homelessness. And maybe we can come back and have that conversation at a later time. But I take away from this conversation, and I hope our audience as well does, that this is a major issue that will require a systemic approach. And it includes not only intervention, but prevention at the very beginning, and starting with the very young. And how we look at those matrices in terms of homelessness, housing insecurity, food insecurity, income disparities, health disparities, environmental matters, and how we uphold and maintain the quality of life in our communities, no matter what level of income the community represents, that we all play a role in bringing a comprehensive systemic approach to solving the challenges of rising violent crime in our cities and communities around the nation. I hope this has been an enlightening conversation. And I want to thank both mayors, Frank Scott Jr. of Little Rock, Arkansas, and Mayor Byron Brown of Buffalo, New York, for joining us for this conversation. And as we close, once again, thank Ignite Cities for their commitment and support in working with mayors and cities all over this country to elevate these type of conversations through technology, but also working with us individually in our cities to do a lot of innovative, phenomenal things that we are doing. And I'm glad, George, you and Ignite City are working with me in Denver on some things that I've identified are critically important. I want to thank the American African American Association, Mayors Association, and Phyllis Dickerson, the CEO and president, and Mayor Scott again as chairman of that organization that we're all members of. And
Mayor,
thank the city.
Can I jump in for 1 second?
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, I'm going to leave it real quick because you mentioned something. First of all, thank you for allowing us to work with you in your city. Mayor Brown, listening to you, and I'm going to make this quick because I know we're going to close. Listening to you and listening to what happened, my heart broke listening to it. As Mayor Hancock will tell you, and as Mayor Frank Scott Jr. will tell you, enroll our team to be as supportive as possible. I'll connect with you from a technology perspective. We're working to change the way every community works. We'll bring in resources and ideas. And I can't stand to even hear what occurred. I can't even imagine a human being having that mindset. And in this case, I want to ensure that I become obligated to support as much as possible. Mayor Hancock will tell you we'll do everything we can. Mayor Frank Scott Jr. will tell you that as well. But I want to connect with you to see what our group can do with firms from around the world to supply some support and also change the way things work moving forward. I want to know that if there's a gunshot that goes off, that the police are dispatched, the camera goes on, the light gets brighter, the bus stops moving. You collect data that tells you where things are happening more frequently. And in fact, we're working on ideas with smart pole and lighting and communication in Denver as we speak. So we'd like to share some of that. But I just want to make sure we do something. So I'm obligating myself to do something today. So I'm sorry for interrupting, Mayor Hancock.
Well said. And as we get ready to close, let's give Mayor Scott and Brown a couple seconds if you want to say any final closing words. Mayor Scott?
Sure. Just on behalf of the African American Mayors Association, we want to share our appreciation to you, Mayor Hancock, for leading this insightful discussion on gun violence as an epidemic and a public health emergency, and to Ignite Cities and all that you all are doing to help cities focus on technology and data-driven policy approaches.
And on behalf of the people of Buffalo, certainly I'm honored to be part of this critically important discussion. Mayor Hancock, thank you for leading the discussion and your leadership on this issue. And Ignite Cities, thank you for what you are doing nationally to help cities all across the country. And George, I certainly look forward to working very closely with you and the organization.
Two
Thank you,
very
thank you.
good, yeah, two very phenomenal men, but also phenomenal mayors. And to the mayors and other staff who are listening in, if your cities have not declared gun violence a public health crises, let me encourage you to take a look at it. As Mayor Scott has pointed out, we did it in Denver as well. And what it did was it broadened our approach to the issue beyond just a criminal act. You know, we know it begins way before someone decides to pick up a gun and point it towards someone else, and bring a lot of different resources to the table, different stakeholders who didn't think they had any role in any of this, now find themselves, you know, in the center of this opportunity to solve the crime in our cities. So that's it. Next month, we'll be back with further discussion on our global smart city collaboration. We look forward to coming together once again to do this, and seeing you for further insightful and collaborative conversations. God bless everyone. Hang in there until the next time we talk. Thank you, George.
You got it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.